Hi, my name is Andrew, this is Miguel, and this is a double take review. A double take review is when two people get together in a room and talk about games while they make love together.
Wait,
And we're in California, so it's a double. Because burgers.
also we're not in a room together.
Because we're quarantined.
Anyway,
We're talking about Super Wiloo Demake today. It came out in last July. We were supposed to talk about it a long time ago, but we basically stopped doing YouTube for a while, and now we're back because we want to. This is a 2D platformer based off of the same school of thought that 2D platformers are back, but they're not really anymore. They had a really big resurgence a few years ago, like 5-10 years ago, and now they're just kind of, there's like one big one every year. There's like, Celeste was last year's. The year before that was like Shovel Knight or something. This is not one of those games. This game is fine. I was just going to say, this game is fine at best. Long story short, we'll talk about things in slightly more detail. Super Wiloo Demake is a game that wants to be a lot more than it actually is. It's trying to be Super Mario Bros. 3, but without any of the charm or polish.
wow, that is generous. I would say that this game embodies everything I hate about platformers.
Are you not a platforming game fan to begin with? I forget.
Not generally, yeah, that's my... it feels like the genre is tired to me. Only very fresh takes on it, like Shovel Knight, like Super Meat Boy, really garner any interest from my point of view.
Have you looked into a game like Celeste or anything like that? Other really big, like, well critically acclaimed games in this genre?
Not Celeste. I remember that one taking some rewards home, and I thought I should give it a shot, but I never did.
Fair enough.
But I do tend to do that with the ones that seem special.
That's fair. Yeah, so I think you and I are kind of saying the same thing. I love platformers. It's one of my preferred go-to genres. Like, if I just want to play something...
I could just play Mega Man X forever.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. So this Super Wiloo Demake doesn't really stand out at all, which is, I think, what we're both saying.
Just not in a positive way.
How so?
This game is like an abyss. You go into this, and you're stuck in either a very slow-moving and boring game, or if you want to hammer your way through it, it's extremely frustrating because the controls are not tight at all. The movement is very floaty, imprecise. Your double jump is virtually useless except in a niche situation that the game sets up for you. You're always using it to recover, but it's only a fraction of the potency of your normal jump, which feels very restrictive, I want to say.
Didn't have that many issues with the controls, but I could also just have played a lot more bad games than you.
True.
And so I'm just used to these types of controls. I think it really takes something special for me to be like, man, these controls.
Yeah, you have like brain calluses, where it takes some really bad stuff to get through to you.
The other day we were playing Bubble Bobble online, and you were hosting it I was hosting it at first, and you could not handle the lag. And when we switched and you started hosting it and I was dealing with the lag, I was fine. Like, obviously it's not ideal, but I don't know. I just kind of acclimate myself to these situations, I guess.
Right.
I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or a good perspective to have, but I can see why you would think it's not tight, because it's not. Like, it's not Super Meat Boy. The controls aren't good, but I think that someone who is super familiar with the genre won't have any issues with it.
I think it's certainly something you could adapt to. As a matter of fact, I forced myself to get through the entire game. But that does not make it enjoyable.
That's fair. I think my biggest complaint about the game, and this is, like, people might think this is just a small qualm, but I really didn't like the music in this game. It's so repetitive. It's the same few tracks over and over again, and it kind of matches the slow pace of the game, but it's just not good. The whole experience is honestly really forgettable. It feels like this was somebody's first time making a platformer, and it's just super basic.
Not only was the music repetitive, but it was constantly clipping. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't in my playthrough.
I was listening to it over my TV speakers, not in earphones, so that couldn't be part of it. But yeah, I believe the bass synth going on in the music, constantly clipping. It was too loud. It was mixed too high or not balanced properly. Sounded abysmal.
I think one of the other main complaints I have are the boss battles suck too.
Those were so boring.
They're really too easy. They got the scale right. You know, a lot of the times in these, I really appreciate how big the bosses were, but they don't do anything. When the stages are harder than the bosses, that's when you know you have a problem, because you build your way up through this adventure, and it's getting exponentially harder, and then when you finally get to the boss, there's like no payoff. There's nothing satisfying about beating them because you just dunk on them.
In the case of the final boss, the game just isn't designed properly for you to fight the boss the way they intended. Do you know how many times the recoil of hitting him launched me into the lava?
I don't.
Too many. The answer is too many. It was probably only like 5. But when you're as frustrated as I am with a game, that's too many.
Yeah. You know, I think we could probably move into scoring. There's not a ton to talk about. It, like I said, it's a platformer. It's not particularly well made. There's no story. We've already mentioned the controls are bad. I guess the other thing we can mention are the visuals, which they're fine. They're nothing special. They're like totally average. The sprite art is decent, but it's nothing that's gonna make you like, oh man, this is a pretty pixel game.
Right.
And you already aren't a fan of most pixel art.
True. On top of level art that obstructs your view.
Yeah. We were talking about that the other day when it comes on another game. So yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and grade first. I'm thinking like a D+. It doesn't crash.
Is that all?
It doesn't crash. For me, like the stages and everything, it wasn't super frustrating, but I didn't get any like enjoyment out of it. I just kind of played through it, and so I don't think it's an average game. I don't think it's like, I guess an F would be absolutely horrible. I imagine I would only give an F to something that's like broken. So I guess I'm going to go with a D+.
Alright. For that same reason why you would give an F, I give this game a D-. This is absolutely as close to being a failure as you can get with a game, I believe. While it wasn't crashing, it had very big performance issues. Frequently, mid-jump or when enemies come on screen, or even in the snow level, just the background snow slowed down the game. How could that possibly happen in a pixel art game?
I have honestly no idea.
It either has something to do with the programming or the actual construction of the game when exported. Either way, this game barely skirts by as a functional game in my eyes.
Like, the best way I can put it is, I feel like if I'm not a game designer at all, but if I were to buy one of those like platform creation games or like studio suites things, like an RPG Maker but for platformers, I could make this game.
Considering that the engine you'd be working with would probably be fine-tuned, you could make a far better game.
Yeah, and that's just like drag and dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's all we got to say about this. The next game we're going to be talking about is going to be a much better, much more exciting game. But like I said, this has been on the back burner for a little while, and we just wanted to move past it. So that's about it from us for this time. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the next double take or hot take or cold take. We don't do those.
I don't think that's a thing.
Quick take?
I mean, that's a hot take, right?
I don't know, man.
We'll figure it out. Thanks, everybody.